Here's some examples of atheist rage. Atheists rage against a God they say doesn't exist.
I think we need HDMI 3 on. It is? Hey, stand by. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. All right.
This better be good, man. This
It's
better
good.
be good. If it's not good, I'm totally going to kick your butt
Hey, there's no
on
such thing as good. It's all relative.
It is all relative.
All right. You got to listen. You got to watch closely, David. I'm sorry you got a bad angle here, but you really got to watch closely. You right, guys ready to go? We got sound? Here we go.
Is God good? If he is, why is there suffering and evil? Let's assume for the moment that God is all-powerful. This means that God can do anything that is logically possible. So he can create galaxies and subatomic particles and rainforests and you. But God cannot do what is logically impossible. He cannot make a square circle or a one-ended stick. So can God make a rock so big that he can't lift it? No. So what if, when God created human beings, he wanted them to be free? Freedom's a good thing, but if humans are to be free, they cannot be forced to obey God, because freedom without choice is like a square circle. It's a logical contradiction. No choice, no freedom. God didn't want robots. He wanted real people. The first humans endowed with the awesome power of free choice abused their freedom. The tragic consequences of their bad choice and our bad choices ripple across the world. God is responsible for the fact of freedom, but humans are responsible for their acts of freedom. But let's remember, we don't suffer alone. God will put an end to suffering and evil. And God became a man to suffer with us. God is good, and he wants real people like you to know him, but the free choice is yours.
So the ultimate answer to the question is we have free will. And why do we have free will? Because that's the only way we can have love.
Free will.
Yes,
free will. You're actually
by the
saying
way,
God wants babies to be born with cancer so that we can have free will. We couldn't have free will if babies didn't have cancer.
No. What I'm saying is
That's what you're
the
saying.
entrance of evil into the universe was a result of free choice. And the reason we had free choice was because that's the only way we could have love, but this also creates the possibility for evil.
The entrance of evil into the universe was a result of free choice.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a second,
Yes.
okay? Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, and God is there with them.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you brought it up.
No,
I'm allowed to do this.
I understand
You want
that.
to keep going on this?
Yeah, I want to finish the thought here on evil, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
keep doing this, because
Okay.
this is good stuff.
Okay, all right, good.
Because when it comes down to it, Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden with God, and God is omniscient, and God knows the future, and God puts the tree of knowledge of good and evil in spot X.
Yeah.
And when he does that, he's omniscient, and he knows that Adam is going to eat that fruit.
Yeah.
He knows it's going to cause the fall of man, and billions of souls will go to hell, and according to you, babies will start being born with cancer.
Okay.
If he puts the tree of knowledge over here, it doesn't happen. Or if he doesn't put it there at all, it doesn't happen. But God puts it where he knows with 100% certainty that Adam is going to eat of that fruit. Who made that choice?
God knows the end from the beginning.
Yeah.
And he created the universe, and he created he knew what would happen.
Anytime you want to answer the question.
I'm getting there. But that doesn't mean people don't have free choice. And you're saying that God then could not have done that if somebody sins. Well, let me ask you a question.
That's not what I said at all. What I asked you was, who made the choice in the Garden of Eden? You said
Adam and Eve did.
Adam and Eve made the choice. Now, let me ask a question. Let me put it this way. God knows with 100% certainty that if I put the tree of knowledge here, billions of souls go to hell, and babies get cancer, according to you, which doesn't follow either, but I'll let you pass on the point.
Wait.
But if
Stop.
I put it over here...
No, hold on.
No, this is the
There's
point.
nothing wrong with babies getting cancer, because it's all relative.
You know what? I judge that. I judge that
Well,
to be
that's
wrong.
just your personal
But you're
problem,
also
then.
avoiding the question in a great big way.
No. If you
Now-
allow me to continue with my presentation, I'll go into it.
Another video? I want you to answer me.
It's not another video.
Okay, answer me. When God put the tree of knowledge of good and evil here instead of here, knowing that when he put it here, knowing with 100% certainty.
I got it. Let me answer it. Okay.
Go for it.
Here's the problem. The problem here, David, is that you're assuming that God could have created another universe where nobody sinned. That, while it's logically possible, it might not be actually achievable with free creatures.
So sin was not an option.
No, sin, if God creates a universe with free creatures, he might not be able to create a universe where everybody freely chooses not to sin. So he creates the universe we're in now, people freely choose to sin, and then his job, the whole purpose of the Bible, and we're not really even here to talk about the Bible, but since you brought it up, the whole theme of the Bible, from Genesis to maps, is one word. And that is redemption. You have paradise lost in Genesis, paradise regained in Revelation.
You are totally avoiding my question.
No, I'm getting there.
Before Adam ate that apple, he was without sin.
Yes.
Before he
And
ate that apple, he was
chose-
without sin. God put the tree here.
Yes.
He knew it would cause
Yes.
the fall of man.
Yes.
God pushed Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden. God made the decision.
Yes.
God made the choice.
And then God made the choice to go in and rescue him.
So
that's
and
what
then-
the redemption's
and
all
then
about.
God chose.
David,
I think they'll clap for anything in this audience.
let me go.
It's like, so funny. I'm sorry. It's so funny. Oh my gosh. Now we'll go to Vekl and Skyler Fiction. Skyler again saying that God does not exist.
I agree with that. But again, if we got to separate that from determining the intrinsic nature of the act in and of itself. Those are two separate things. Did God command that babies be killed in 1 Samuel 15? Absolutely, he did. There's no denying that, you know. But is it immoral? That's a whole other different subject there.
Well, the problem is when you keep going back, we got to prove whether something's intrinsic. Like, you have to prove that. I don't believe in things being intrinsic value or having intrinsic morality of some sort. Like, you got to prove that. Like, that's not up to me to do. You already admit morals are subjective in some degree, just not all of them. So, like, if you're going to claim things are intrinsic, you're going to be the one who's going to have to demonstrate that claim.
Again, my view is that if God is the arbiter of all things, including the concept of morality, then to go against him would be inherently wrong. That's my worldview. So I determine whether or not it's comfortable or whether or not it brings me utter pleasure to do a certain thing. Doesn't matter. I have to determine, we use God as the ultimate measuring stick to determine the moral ontology of the thing that's in question.
Yeah, but I don't understand. Like, how are you actually showing that he is the actual standard? How are you actually showing that? Like,
Well,
even if I were to grant you objective morals exist, right? Let's say I grant you that. Let's just say that somehow we as human beings have objective morals, right? How would we link them back to your God? How would we know they're from your God, not something else?
well, I would say my perspective is simply that we determine good from evil, right and wrong, by simply looking to God and his word as the ultimate authority. So God by nature is omnipotent, he's omniscient, he's omnipresent, so on and so forth. So we look at scripture. Hold on. Yes. Okay, good job. Okay. She's throwing me off. All I'm simply saying is this is why the Bible reveals to us only not what's wrong, but why it's wrong. So for instance, and I brought this up in one of our other debates, is the 10th commandment, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, so on and so forth. Why did God give this commandment? Because not doing so is contrary to his nature. Not because he says so, but because it's contrary to his nature. Now, how is it contrary to his nature? Because we know that everything belongs to God. Right? Gosh, come on.
I mean, but
really quick, I'm
yeah.
just going to mention that we will go into Q&A very shortly. So within a few minutes, just because it's late where Vekl is and he has to get up very early. So I do want to have a short and sweet one tonight, and so we'll try to wrap up our Q&A before the end of the hour. So I hate to cut you guys short, but if you guys are ready to go into Q&A in maybe a few minutes, I know that might be a hard transition to wrap up that fast,
No,
but whenever as soon as you can.
If Skyler's okay with that, I'd rather just kind of cut it and go straight to the Q&A because my daughter's getting crazy.
Yeah. Let's just go to Q&A. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little commentary on some of that. We see that a lot of times atheists who say God doesn't exist, and right here Skyler's labeled an atheist. He did say he was an agnostic, though, the other day. But agnostics who say they can't know if God exists or that God doesn't exist, interestingly, are always in a position where they're arguing against things that God does, and they especially focus on the Christian Bible for some reason. So why do these people focus so much on that instead of going after, say, Hindus and Muslims and people in other faiths? Instead, they really focus on Christianity. And I suspect it has to do with the fact that they have an inkling that Christianity is actually true. And guess what? Christianity is actually true. Here we go with the Unbelievable channel. Justin Brierly, Glen Scrivener, and Matt Dillahunty.
It is an interesting sort of time at which there's a whole new set of questions that are being put on the table.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the ineradicability of a religious spirit to humanity.
Okay.
And I do think that one of the things that I think has sort of marked out the new atheism, if we want to give any labels to anywhere, would be the belief that it would be a better thing for society if far fewer people were religious. And I think that certainly captured the four horsemen of the apocalypse, of the atheist apocalypse, you know, Hitchens and Dawkins and Dennett and Harris. They certainly wanted to see people deconverted from Christianity in order to see a more flourishing and better world. But I kind of think Dostoevsky was wrong when he said, you know, when there is no God, everything is permitted. I think what we're seeing is when there is no God, everything is very puritanical, and everything becomes actually even more heightened in its moralism. And I think what we've found is getting rid of God at that level of public discourse has actually led to people pronouncing anathemas on people and burning them at the stake and going on witch hunts.
See, and I don't think this is actually so much tied to atheism. So what I've seen a lot of is people are talking past each other, and people on both sides of an issue are engaged in hyperbole and perhaps not the most honest assessment of what they view as the opposition. But the sort of thing that Glen's talking about, it's not as if atheism is the foundation behind cancel culture or whatever you want to say. No, it is political ideologies and people who have its, you know, I will brook no disagreement and I am not interested in any conversation. If you've said this, you are done. And if you're willing to associate with somebody who said this or whatever, then you are also done.
Yeah, no, I don't think
that's not even an atheist thing.
Yeah, no,
that's
I certainly don't think exactly. It's human nature. I think someone like Jonathan Haidt would say in The Righteous Mind that we all orbit around these little totem poles of highest value, you know, and those totem poles bind and blind. They bind together communities, but they blind us against what the other communities are saying. And therefore, an atheist community can be just as religious in that sense as a Christian community, a Muslim community, a Buddhist community, because we all have these highest ideals. We're all involved in motivated reasoning. We all have our in-group, we all have our out-group, and we can all engage in behavior that is more or less tolerance of one another. And then the question becomes, well, how do we relate towards one another? And the one thing that then rules out is we can't then have an irreligious solution to the problem of these different communities.
Yeah,
is that a fair comment, though, that atheism in that sense is quite religious when it gets its expression in these ways, Matt?
So I'm always going to push back on this atheism thing, but just as far as the label. But yes, speaking kind of colloquially, of course it can be like that because there are humans involved, and this is what humans do. My only concern with religions at all is there any good reason to believe they're true? I would not, you know, people say, oh, religion's never done anything good. Well, that's crap. Religions have done lots of good things. Or actually, more accurately, people who are religious have done good things. They've given us universities, hospitals. That would be true probably as much for secular people as well if it weren't for a disparity in the sort of privileged position that religion has had and benefited from for all these years. Secular organizations had to do a lot more fighting and in a lot more recent time just to get a similar status. For example, we tax exempt status in the United States. It's just, if you're a religion, as long as you're one of the recognized religions, you're just granted it de facto. We're a Baptist church, we're a Catholic church, we're a Unitarian Universalist. Even the Buddhists had to fight for property tax exemption in Austin because it wasn't on the list of like approved religions.
So in Austin, where Matt Dillahunty resides, he runs the Atheist Experience religiously every Sunday at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. I think, 4 p.m. I don't know exactly what time, but it's in the afternoon on Sunday. So when churches are also in operations on Sunday, Matt Dillahunty has been religiously offering his opinions on why he does not believe in God. It's almost as if there is something an underlying current that's driving a person to spend so much time fighting against God, a God he claims doesn't exist. It's as if I would go into the Hindu faith and start following Hindus around on Twitter, start creating a website against Hindus. I mean, it's really a baffling thing that these atheists spend so much time debating, so much of their very short lives debating when they don't think that there is a higher power. Why devote your lives to claiming there is no higher power? It really doesn't make any sense.
I'm Ben Stein. I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
You have written that God is a psychotic delinquent invented by mad, deluded people.
No, I didn't say quite that. I said something rather better than that.
Oh, well, please tell us what you said. Please tell us what you said.
Well, I would have to read it from the book.
No, please.
The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it. A petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully.
So that's what you think of God?
Yeah.
How about if people believed in a God of infinite lovingness and kindness and forgiveness and generosity, sort of like the modern day God? Why spoil it for them? Why not just let them have their fun and enjoy it?
I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. I write a book, people can read it if they want to. I believe that it is a liberating thing to free yourself from primitive superstition.
So religion is a primitive superstition?
Oh, I think it is, yes.
So you believe it's liberating to tell people that there is no God?
I think a lot of people, when they give up God, feel a great sense of release and freedom.
Why do you think that? I mean, what's your dad? What's your scientist? What's your dad?
I think, well, I've had a lot of letters saying that, and I've...
There are 8 billion people in the world, Dr. Dawkins. How many letters have you had?
No, I haven't done that. That's quite true.
Professor Dawkins seemed so convinced that God doesn't exist that I wondered if he would be willing to put a number on it.
Well, it's hard to put a figure on it, but I mean, I'd put it as something like, 99% against or something.
Well, how do you know it's 99%?
I don't.
Say not 97%.
No, I did. You asked me to put a figure on it, and I'm not comfortable putting a figure on it. I think I just think it's very unlikely.
What? But you couldn't put a number on it?
No, of course not. No.
So it could be 49%.
Well, it would be. I mean, I think it's unlikely, and it's quite far from 50%.
How do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I put an argument in the book.
Well, then who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know that.
So we know that the Big Bang, a lot of scientists have supported the Big Bang. In fact, the vast majority of them, including people like Albert Einstein, have supported the Big Bang, which says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This gives us a start date, and the Big Bang gives us a start date. In fact, the Bible helps us to understand our origins, meaning, morality, and purpose. Dawkins cannot understand our origins, meaning, morality, and purpose. In his atheistic naturalistic framework, there is virtually no explanation for things such as even our consciousness. So it's a wonder in this naturalistic sort of a world that everything is explained in the physical, that he can explain his own thoughts and his reasoning process. Because if we're just mere lucky beneficiaries of an evolutionary process that was undirected by anything, there's no reason why we should even believe in the fact of truth.
The sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
What was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So the answer that atheists will often give to explain the origins is to guess, we don't know. We don't know is satisfactory to Mr. Dawkins. He also likes to discuss a lot of other things like panspermia. If you don't believe in an origin or a creator, a lot of times you say, well, how did this first molecule that was self-replicating get onto the earth? He will claim it came from some other molecule on a different planet, even though we have zero evidence of that or even of life on other planets. In fact, I highly recommend anyone here go and listen to Hugh Ross or read any of his books. I've read 5 of his books, and he's discussed a lot of really interesting things. One of the interesting things is that the earth is within 10 habitable zones. We've identified thousands of other planets through the Hubble telescope and the characteristics of those planets, and only one is in 2 habitable zones. So the Earth is in sort of a really Goldilocks position here. We have also, through the telescope, not identified any signs of advanced life in any other country, any other planet. So to make that proposition is a faith position. But let's see what Dawkins says.
You have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet.
This is a faith position without any evidence, ironically.
Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. Well, but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
So the Hebrew God, the God of the Old Testament, he doesn't exist in your view?
Certainly. I mean, that would be a very unpleasant prospect.
And the Holy Trinity of the New Testament,
nothing like that.
Do you believe in any of the Hindu gods? Like Vishnu?
How can you ask such a question?
You don't,
right? How could I? I mean, why would I, given that I don't believe in any others?
You don't believe in the Muslim God?
No. I mean, why do you even need to ask?
Well, I just wanted to be sure. So you don't...
I find this very amusing. He just doesn't want to believe in the Hebrew God. Of course, he focuses especially on the Old Testament God. I suspect that a lot of people who focus on the Old Testament God is really interesting. They don't focus on other gods. They mainly focus on the Christian God, and it's probably because of the truth in Christianity. Which brings us back to the beginning.
That's what the redemption's all about.
God chose.
David,
I think they'll clap for anything in this audience. God is the villain here. God is the one.
Wait, stop. Yes. There's no villains because there's no good or evil. You've already said so.
Stop changing the subject. God is the one who made the choice.
I'm not changing the subject.
You said evil entered into the universe because of a choice. I'm submitting to you that it was not Adam who made that choice.
Who was it?
It was God who made that choice.
God made a choice.
So God's a villain. God's the one who sent you to hell. God's the one who sends everybody to hell. God's the one who caused the fall of man, and he did so with intent, with deliberate. God is an ass.
Nobody sends anybody to hell. You send yourself there.
God sent everybody to hell. That's
David,
good, but you're not listening to the argument if you're applauding.
David, people who are in hell are there justly. Okay?
Oh, well, who's justice?
Well, there is no justice according to your worldview.
Okay, hang on one second.
Yeah.
Let's stop with the applause. Okay, let's just stop with the applause so that we can get more time in here. Okay, and we're getting a little off track. The topic...
We can't change.
was which better explains reality, atheism or theism.
Yeah, that's
Now
why when we're
getting
talking
into
about the Bible
which
theology
is
now,
fine
yeah.
if y'all want to go there, but that wasn't the topic.
But you still haven't made the answer to my question.
It's still you.
I still want to talk about this.
All right, let me continue. Well, no, it's now my turn.
No, that's right. No, wait. Who just you?
He was asking me.
Oh yeah, it's his choice.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
but
his
you
choice.
still got 40 seconds.
The interesting thing here is that atheists say God sends them to hell, but God has made it quite clear in the Bible that he gives everyone a choice. He doesn't force inhabitants in heaven to be there. If God forced its inhabitants in heaven to be there, it wouldn't be heaven. So God gives people a choice. And some people, such as David Silverman and the others I've mentioned here today, have decided that they would rather be without God. And being without God, that's what hell is. Hell is an existence without God. And people don't really understand what exactly that means. But remember, God is love. So if you choose to be without love, you're going to be in the midst of hatred, anger, suffering, tears. You're going to be in a really tragic situation if you choose to be without love. It's a poor choice. So please think, people. Think of what you really want to do.